Welcome everyone, Mark Hanrahan here on KREM 2 Plus. The November election less than a month away now, and aside from all the candidates that will appear on your ballot, there will also be several issues, including a school bond and a parks levy. Together in Spokane, they're calling it Together Spokane. Here to talk more about that, Dr. Adam Swinyard, Superintendent of Spokane Public Schools. Dr. Swinyard, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Let's talk Together Spokane. It's a huge project.
Yeah.
Difficult to describe succinctly and quickly.
It is.
But give us your best shot on what it is and why do you think it's important for people to pass?
Yeah, well, it's over 200 projects, every school, every neighborhood, every park, across a vast continuum of park restrooms to courts, fields, art and culture, trails, playground equipment. Really an expansive project for the taxpayers to consider.
Yeah, and we're talking about a school bond, which would be $200 million to be paid back
Correct.
over roughly 20 years.
Correct.
And then a parks levy, which would be $240 million parks levy to also be paid back roughly that same time, 20 years.
Sure.
Together, $440 million. Why join forces with parks, and explain how that partnership would work?
Yeah, so Spokane Public Schools, we're one of the largest districts in the state, 30,000 kids across 58 schools. There's over 5 million square feet of facility space on 600 acres. And in the early 2000s, the decision was made, how do you maintain 58 schools? Mm-hmm. And the average age of our buildings is around 40 years old. And the decision was made that we should run a bond about every 6 years, select a small number of schools to replace or modernize, and every year do some upgrades to try to extend the useful life as far as we can of our buildings. It's been a really good plan for us, and we've made some good progress, still a ways to go. And in 2018, the city came to us and asked us we do a partnership around libraries. So we ran a school bond and a library together, a bond, and we exchanged some land. We built 2 new middle schools on land that city exchanged for us. We built a library on land that the school district owned. Really great partnership. And so this is a continuation of kind of that collaborative spirit of working together. We'll have a school bond and a park levy, a total of 29 cents per thousand for the taxpayer.
Yeah, and the way you've been talking about it yourself and the Parks Department is together you'll get kind of more bang for your buck versus if these levies and bonds pass separately.
Yeah, it's really amazing. You know, the Parks Department did a pretty comprehensive planning process for their park levy, and we've kind of continued our every 6-year cycle. And if you took those 2 initiatives completely separate, which was the original plan in the summer of 23, they were going to do their thing and the school district would do our thing. That was going to be 31 cents per thousand to the taxpayers. Mm-hmm. By working together, by sharing land, sharing resources, being more collaborative, the cost actually went down. So if these 2 initiatives pass, it'll be 29 cents per thousand to the taxpayer. And we added 30 additional projects. So more projects for less of a total cost, which really shows you how important it is to work together, and probably not super realistic in this day and age for people to go off on their own and do their own thing. We're really gonna have to work together.
And can you let's dive into that a little bit. Can you explain why that would save money with the partnership?
Yeah, well, a good example is the aquatic center. To go out and to build a new aquatic center, probably north of $60 million. For the size of our city and our geographic profile, most communities have an indoor aquatic center. $60 million is not feasible right now with all the different needs. We went to Spokane colleges. We heard that they had a mothballed indoor aquatic center. We went to them and said, could we use this for free if the school district pays to update it and the Parks Department agrees to operate it? And for less than $5 million, the community is going to get an indoor aquatic center. So great example of how partnerships can save money. Another example is there's $15 million of private dollars. Hoopfest is contributing funds. Spokane Youth Sports is going to be contributing north of $5 million. So by bringing lots of partners to the table, sharing land, that's how you get to that better value.
We had a website just pulled up called togetherspokane.org, kind of a one-spot resource for everything this project would do if passed. Let's talk about cost a little bit. So you can go into it, and it's right here. You can open up that tax calculator right there, and then plug in your home's assessed value. For example, if your home's at $300,000, you'd pay an additional $725 per month. If it's $500,000, you'd pay an additional $1,208 per month, correct?
Correct.
I know you've spoke about this a little bit, but there are some bonds and levies that are expiring too, so there might be some relief on the back end to offset the additional cost of this. Is that correct?
Well, it's a really important detail, and bonds and levies get really cumbersome. Sure. And one of the things that we emphasize every time we're talking about, this is a tax increase. Mm-hmm. This is going to make your taxes go up. People are going to have to decide if the investment is worth the return. Of the 29 cents, 2 cents goes to the school district, 27 cents goes to the Parks Department. And people say, well, how could it only be 2 cents to the school district? Well, people already have a bond bill on their taxes. And if nothing else new happens, people will have a bond bill into the mid-2040s. If this passes, it'll add 2 cents to people's existing bond bill, because we add bonds on and we pay them off, and we add bonds on and we pay them off. And that's part of that steady as you go approach that's been in place since 2000. If you take the average tax rate of what we're projecting over the next 15 years, the tax rate will be relatively stable over that time, because we're adding some dollars on, but we're also at the same time paying dollars off. Keeps things relatively consistent.
I know I'm being a bit redundant here, so I apologize. But when people see that figure, $440 million, and maybe they don't have kids still in Spokane Public Schools, or maybe they don't utilize our parks, they're going, man, that's a lot of money you're asking me to take on as a taxpayer. What's your pitch to them?
Well, I think the first is we had two really important North Stars with this. The first is we are a community, we have got to get off screens. Kids, adults, seniors, we have to create experiences so that every day people are going out of their homes, off of their screens, interacting with each other. We know that's incredibly important for kids, but also adults and seniors. So we wanted to create as many projects as we could to provide experiences for people to be off of screens and together. That was a huge piece of it. The second piece was, how do you create value so there's enough projects across enough different areas where people could look at it and say, does this save me money? Maybe it saves me money because I'm not gonna have to drive my kid across the county to get to a sports practice. Maybe it saves me money because I like to play tennis or pickleball and I'm paying for a membership where now I will be able to access in a public facility. Yeah. Does it save me money, and or is there something in there that's worth my less than $8 a month, which is what the average taxpayer would pay? And that was really one of the goals, is to have enough projects, restrooms, parks, art and culture, fields, aquatics, as many different things, so that every member of the community could look at it and say, is there something in there that I personally get some value from, that's worth my dollar, that I care about going to my local park, I care about trails, I really want to do aquatics, or I care about my family being able to access free preschool for 4-year-olds. That's why we really tried to stretch that value and get to as many projects as possible so that every member of the community could see themselves in it.
Was there ever any thought given to maybe let's put out a smaller bond to focus on some more just like higher pressing immediate projects right now? For example, Adams Elementary. So maybe come to voters with a smaller bond, hopefully get that passed and replace that, and then go on kind of like that.
Yeah, well, we went through a process, again, 58 schools,
Sure.
5 million square feet. We went through a facility study, and that committee of parents, community members, facility experts, they came up with a list of $400 million worth of projects. We knew that probably isn't realistic. The tax burden is real. That list was then whittled down to 200 million. And so what we tried to do is we looked at what are the schools that are most in need. Adams Elementary, Madison, parts of North Central, some safety enhancements to Gary Middle School for single point of entry. So we really tried to whittle that down. We went from 400 million from what that committee recommended, and the school board said, that's not realistic. So we need to scale it down even further, and that's what people are looking at now, is this much scaled down version. The last bond in 2018 was over 500 million.
Right. Bonds and levies can be a bit confusing for folks who maybe aren't in tune with the whole process.
Yeah.
Bonds generally pay for buildings, levies pay for other things.
Correct.
This is a bond, so it'll pay for buildings. But 2024, looking back a year, was kind of a rough year for bonds in terms of school districts and getting those passed, because there was a higher threshold for voter approval.
Correct.
It requires a supermajority of 60%.
Correct.
Do you feel more hopeful or confident you can get to that 60% this time around?
Well, in 2024, we were just shy of 57%. So more than the majority of our community said yes to the bond. They can build T-Mobile Stadium in Seattle for a 50% majority, but you can't build an elementary school with a 50% majority. That's the way it is, and there's lots of thought that's gone into that. So we're hopeful that by doing a lot of listening, by partnering together, by bringing outside dollars, by addressing some really important needs like having a trades high school, which will be an incredible opportunity for the kids in our community and our local business and industry, that we're providing a value proposition for the community to consider. And that's our role, is to listen to the needs, come up with opportunities, and then the community decides whether or not that's worth their investment.
Let's talk about kind of one specific issue, just because it's maybe important to me with kids in middle school who are both in sports.
Yeah.
Lighted fields, it's hard to come by. And as you know, this time of year with soccer, it gets dark early, so it's hard to find that practice space.
Well, our big focus as a school district, every kid every day needs to be off of their screens in the afternoons in an after-school activity. We know that screens are having a massive detrimental impact on the wellness of kids. The research from 2008, when iPhones came out, to now, it is abundantly clear on the impact. The good news is kids are responding and families are responding. Our sports clubs performing, they're exploding. We have 150 kids at one of our high schools doing volleyball. We have over 600 kids playing middle school tackle football. We had a middle school tackle football game at the new stadium. Over 1,200 people were there to watch that game. The good news is people are responding. The problem is we are out of space. We have 8 soccer teams on a field in a 1-hour time block. We're turning middle school kids away from baseball. So we need more fields, and all-weather fields with lights is a way to stretch the day, but also stretch the season as well.
Assuming that this does pass, at least let's assume the bond passes. How quickly can folks expect to see some of the projects get underway and completed by?
Yeah, well, we've had a consistent commitment that we finish our bond projects within a 6-year window. And so if the ballot measures prevail, we'll be breaking ground on Adams Elementary almost right away. And then we'll be determining the sequence for some of those other projects. Merkel Sports Complex, adding those 6 additional all-weather fields, is another project that will be first up in the queue, as well as the new park off of Indian Trail.
Gotcha. You've been holding a series of town hall meetings recently, talking to voters about Together Spokane. What's been maybe the most common question you get, and maybe what's the most common misconception you have from voters at home about what the project would do?
Yeah, well, we've heard lots of positive feedback. We've had really good attendance, which our goal is to get out factual information. We want people to have the facts, know exactly what the cost is going to be, and make the decision that is best from them. And so we've heard a lot of questions, but they really transcend so many different topics, which is reflective of all the different types of activities that are part of this proposal. Cost is a huge one. The other one is public safety. People are very concerned about public safety right now. This initiative will will quadruple the number of park rangers in our community. Each quadrant of the community, rather than just park rangers at Riverfront Park, there'll be park rangers in each quadrant of Spokane. But the cost and public safety, those are 2 huge concerns. This initiative doesn't solve our public safety problems. Those are other pieces that will be important for the ingredients to move the needle on that. But we do believe that this initiative, does help move us in the right direction by activating our parks, by having lighting, by doing environmental design where maybe a restroom is in the back corner of a park with not good visibility. Now that restroom gets moved up into the corner of the park by the parking lot where there's more traffic. And we want people to be active. So public safety and cost are huge concerns, and we want people to know the facts around the cost, but we also want them to know how this initiative supports our pursuit of better public safety in Spokane. Yeah,
Dr. Swinard, we've already touched on this. Again, I'm being a bit redundant, but this is the most common question, or what we hear most frequently from viewers at home is about the cost that you just touched on. I think a lot of folks right now just kind of feel nickel and dime, with just the cost of everything right now is so high. Does that make it more difficult to pitch this idea, to pitch this project?
Well, I think it definitely makes it a hard decision because people are feeling the realities of a tax burden. I think it's made the initiative better, though. And it's made it better in terms of us stretching the value so that we can go to the taxpayers and say, is there something in here that saves you money? Maybe this is going to bring down the cost of programming. We went from $175 to play kindergarten basketball in our community to $50. We did that through partnerships and creating more spaces. Does it cut down the distance you have to drive to get your kids to practice? I talked to a family the other day, Mark, that's paying almost $2,000 a month for childcare. Does free preschool for your 4-year-old, when a family's looking at, well, this is going to cost me $8 a month, but I'm going to save $2,000 because I can get my kid into preschool at their local elementary. Those are real considerations where we've tried to stretch the value to as many people as possible so that they can consider, what's this going to cost me versus what am I going to get in return?
Gotcha. And then just talking about the 2 separate measures between SPS and the parks. they'll appear on your ballot. This is a sample ballot right here separately,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Just wanted to make it clear for voters. They're
Yeah.
not going to find a Together Spokane initiative on the ballot. It's two separate things.
Two separate measures. Park levy takes 50% to pass,
Right.
and a school bond, separate initiative, a separate check yes or no, and that takes 60% to pass.
Gotcha. And on that note, what happens if, let's say, the bond passes, the school bond passes, but the levy doesn't, and vice versa?
Yeah, really good question. Those partnership projects that we discussed, those won't happen. So those 30 projects go away, and the scope of some of the other projects will be reduced. A good example is at Madison Elementary. 24, it was just going to be an elementary school. In 2025, it's going to be a community center with an elementary school inside of it, a boys and girls club inside of it, a 5-court field house. If the bond passes and the levy fails, we'll still build Madison Elementary. The scope of that project is diminished significantly, where we're back to building a prototypical elementary school.
If the bond fails this go around, how will we complete some of these higher priority projects?
Well, Adams will continue to be in its current state. It was well reported the first week of school when we had that really hot weather. Madison Elementary didn't have air conditioning. They'll continue to not have air conditioning. We'll continue to do the best we can to make sure that we prioritize safety inside of those buildings. But as they get further and further past their useful life, they get harder to maintain. And they also don't present the type of learning environment that we know that we want as parents for our own kids,
Sure.
and we know that every kid deserves.
Back on the topic of safety, because that's one thing we hear about a lot here at the station.
Yeah.
Will the bond and Together Spokane address any school safety issues, like adding, an added layer of security at certain schools that might not have it as of yet?
Yeah, the best example of that is Gary Middle School. So we use what we call single point of entry. So when you come to a school, before you can enter the building, there's a screening process where you push a button, you identify yourself. The main office then pushes a button, you're able to enter the main office, be a second layer of screening, and then you can enter the school. Gary Middle School has single point of entry, but the distance you go from when you're buzzed in to the main office, you have to go down a hallway. So this initiative would move the main office at Gary Middle School to the front of the school, which is more typical of our other buildings. It's a good example of how these initiatives support safety and infrastructure. They also make sure that we're able to maintain our camera system, which is a very important mitigation strategy.
Okay. So for voters, you won't find Together Spokane worded like that on your ballot.
Correct.
Two separate things. You'll look for Proposition 1 for the school district bond, and I think it's also called Proposition 1 for the parks levy as well on your ballot. Let's move on to a different topic, and let's talk about the balanced calendar for next year. I think a lot of people might misconstrue a balanced calendar with being year-round school.
Yeah.
That's not the case, but what is a balanced calendar, and why is the district moving to it?
Well, the state requires 180 school days. School districts plan those and deliver those 180 days all sorts of different ways, but typically it's a late August start and a early June, mid-June release. And what a balanced calendar is about is seeing if you can redistribute those days modestly. So we're not talking about year-round school, we're not going to school in July, but a balanced calendar in Spokane is going to mean we're going to start the school day a few days earlier. We're going to go just a little bit longer, and we're going to build in some additional breaks. Probably the most unique part of our plan is that there'll be a week-long break in October.
Okay.
And so school will start, towards the end of August. We'll get in around 6 to 7 weeks. Then we'll take a break in October. And then obviously there's some of your more traditional breaks that we're used to. And really that was around, providing some breaks for particularly just around student absences, staff's absences. About every 6 to 8 weeks, we see a spike in illnesses, a spike in absenteeism. And so this is an attempt to think outside the box and creatively about how do we mitigate that, because we don't want staff to have to miss school, kids be away from their teacher, and we don't want kids to miss school either. So it's a way to rethink what the school calendar looks like.
And the summer break will be just a little bit shorter, is that correct?
Just a little bit shorter. So just, we'll start about a week sooner, although we'll be starting, August 25th, which, there's been times in Spokane where we've started close to that before. So I wouldn't say these are radical shifts. These are modest bumps in when we start and stop the school year to try to have some of those additional breaks.
As you know, anytime you start talking about changing schedules, that gets people's attention.
Oh, it does.
Parents are concerned about how am I going to
Yeah.
find childcare for my kids if they're young.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that that was a factor in play when deciding to do this.
We did. We had a work group, and we had community partners at the table. We had parents at the table, and our plan, particularly for that October break, because I think it'll feel very new to our community. We'll do lots of messaging around. Here's camps that you can put your kid in. Here's different experiences, because we know for our working families, whenever those 180 days fall, on the other days, you got to have childcare for your student, and we want to be mindful of that.
And that starts again the 26-27 school year.
26-27, not this October, but next October.
Copy that. The final topic I wanted to ask you about is the district's kind of evolving cell phone policy.
Yep.
Rolled it out last school year, I believe,
Correct.
and made some tweaks this school year. Can you kind of describe what those are?
Yeah, well, we've had a long conversation around the disengagement of kids, and since 2008, unfortunately, you can just about pick the metric: suicide attempts, suicide, anxiety, depression, anorexia, bulimia, self-harm. Even the percentage of kids getting their driver's license has changed dramatically. So it's really clear that screens are having an impact on kids, and our strategy is really twofold. One is not having screens in school. Our kids have made a great adjustment to that. They've been great. And our second pillar is every kid, every day is doing something after school. We're not going to be able to take all the devices away. They're here to stay. But let's shorten the amount of time that kids have unstructured opportunities to be on those devices. And this year we've also started talking about sleep health, because we've got a lot of kids that are taking those screens to bed, and they're not getting the sleep that they need.
But if I have a kid who's maybe entering middle school or even high school, what can they expect for the cell phone policy? If they bring it to school, they kind of have to check it somewhere, right? And then collect it afterwards?
So middle school, they need to be off and put away for the entirety that they're in the building on the school day. High school is a little bit different. They're allowed to have their phones during passing period and at lunch. We did that really intentionally because we believe that we need to have healthy transitions for kids. High schoolers developmentally are old enough to learn time and place. If I took out my phone right now to take a text message, that's not a professional approach to using a device. Our kids can learn time and place. There's a time to look at it, there's a time to not. They've made that transition really, really well. It's been highly successful. They don't always love every minute of it, but we've heard really good feedback from kids.
Okay. As we round out our interview, Dr. Swinyard, November 4th is Election Day. And so people got to have their ballots at least in by the 4th, 8 p.m.
Correct.
on Election Day, in one of those drop boxes or postmarked.
Correct.
And then also, in terms of if folks want to go to one of your town hall meetings and hear from you directly, the next one is tonight, I believe.
Correct.
6 o'clock at Ferris High School?
6 o'clock at Ferris High School.
Okay, and what can folks expect when they go to those meetings?
Yeah, just a short, overview of the initiatives, a highlight of projects specifically in the South region. So we've done town halls in each region of the city, and then an opportunity to ask questions and give feedback. And we've heard some good ideas and some good suggestions. So looking forward to tonight.
All right, Dr. Adam Swinyard, really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.